to the next slide here. Ta-da. So I don't know who looked at my LinkedIn, but this was on my LinkedIn yesterday. So this is a summary of the 10 tips. So one is know your why. Sonia's going to go real deep into that next time.
Yes.
Right. In July when we do our meetup.
Yes.
Choose a theme and format. Oh, why did that get messed up? Anyways, choose a theme and format. So the theme is what you want to talk about. It sounds like everybody here kind of knows what they want to talk about. And then that kind of drives your format too. So you could do interview, you can do solo, you can do co-host. We'll get into those. Keywords and title, we'll get into that. Content, cover art, analytics, social media, social and interest media, they're calling it now. So this is some of the stuff Rob put in there. So he knows more about some of this stuff than I do, but I know more about like the podcast marketing and marketing in general, video, shorts and clips, listener experience, and YouTube and Spotify. So those are the things we're going to be covering. Let me go
So when we get a link to this, we'll be able to see that just like that because it's hard to put faces. Right?
Oh, Sonia, can you scooch over towards Gina a bit?
Yeah. You can stay.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay. You know what? I'm gonna grab.
Is that good?
Yeah, the other slides aren't as, yeah. Oh, okay.
Thank you for doing that.
Oh, no problem. So these slides are easier to see with everybody. So do you want to talk about this one, Sonia?
Sure. So I'm going to start, and there is an intention to go a little bit deeper on knowing your why. I have a coaching exercise that's really a great one that goes very deep. It's really the why of anything you do, and it's a very simple exercise. What the heck? Maybe I'll just talk about it because we have a second. We won't do it today, but it's a very easy one for you to do at home. And so you can start with, why is it that you want to do your specific podcast? Why is that important to you? And then you'll have an answer. Maybe it's because I am interested in the topic. So why is it important to you to talk about that topic? And then you'll be like, because I want to teach people, I have this knowledge or experience, or I have a personal experience and I think I can help people, whatever your answer is. Then it's, why is it important for you to help people? So you see, every answer you give, you are then asking, why is it important? So you start with one, you get an answer. Why is that answer important? You get an answer. Why is that important? And you do that 7 times, sometimes 8, sometimes 9. Usually the first 3 or 4 are relatively easy. You know, they're the obvious ones, the ones that you kind of know, the ones that you tell your friends, the one you tell yourself. But it's really when you get to number 4, number 5, number 6, that's when it goes very deep. And it starts to really get to the underbelly of what drives you in life, period. And that's just a really interesting thing to know. It motivates you. It helps you when things are difficult. It is the reason that you get out of bed every morning. And I find that you can actually use that exercise with almost anything. And it's interesting how the answer is not all that dissimilar, because at the core of who we are, our essence, there is this driving why. And so it's a really great thing to know, to tap into, just as you start, just of why are you doing this? Then there's the business why, right? So this is the core why. This is the human why. This is the thing that drives you, the heart and soul of why you do what you do. And then we want the business why. And so then there's, why are you doing a podcast to begin with, right? And
Yeah.
I know we talked about it when I asked Elizabeth, why are you doing it? She's like, well, for fun.
Yeah, that was really
right?
So my husband and I have a podcast and radio show, and somebody from iHeart approached us to do this radio show for entrepreneurs. He's a patent attorney, patents, copyrights, trademarks, and we pay for it. So it's not like it's not with me, these great, wonderful people like Sonia and Gina. But anyway, and so we thought about it, and it was not a rational decision. It was a very emotional decision for us, I think. We were kind of in a rut with the law firm, and we just thought this would be something really fun and exciting to try. And yeah, it costs money, but it was part of our marketing effort. So we jumped in with both feet and here we are today.
Yeah, with a successful podcast that's won awards and now a podcast studio.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm having other people get there because one thing people know about me is I love to talk. So and I like to ask questions. So podcasting is perfect for me. But yeah, so we had set up this podcast studio during COVID because we were still recording for the radio show, and Richard had he set up all this tech stuff. I can't take credit for it. I said, let's rent the podcast studio out to other people to use. So he's like, okay. So he redid everything, but we had these expensive mics. And I realized when I started, people weren't just going to come in here and record. Some people may, but people needed help too. So we started the meetup to see how much interest there was and how much coaching people would want to, and to just educate. So
Yeah. And so it's an important question to start. And I think, Elizabeth, that's something you often say with podcasting and marketing. It really starts with the marketing plan, at the idea of what is it? Why are you doing it? Are you doing it for fun? Are you doing it for growth? Are you doing it to market another service? Are you doing it to grow an audience? Are you doing it because you just have a passion for this topic and you just have to share your message? What is it that's really driving your why? Why is it that you're doing it? Because that might shape what you do with it and how you go about doing it, and what other different angles you're going to take. So it really is an important question to start with. One, to get that core why. Two, to get the more business why of what it is that you're trying to get out of this endeavor. Because you're going to hit some bumps in the road. It's inevitable. And it's really important to know that why, because that's what's going to help you move beyond it.
right. And are there people in the waiting room?
One.
And the people I've been talking to about starting their podcasts have all asked me, how do I rise above the noise? And so that's the reason for this particular episode of this meetup, is to try to give people some tips that will help them be successful from the start. And what I tell everybody, what Sonia just said, is you build marketing in from day one before you even start your podcast. And yeah, and a lot of podcasters don't know a lot about marketing, and that's why they never go anywhere. And it's hard to stay consistent if you don't see things going places too. But I'll tell you, for Passage to Profit show with Richard and myself, we started it. We didn't know anything about, like, we were supposed to put it on social media or even YouTube. It was audio or any of this stuff. We learned it all as we went along. Now we've had it for 7 years, and we're one of the top 3% podcasts globally. And I think that's just from the longevity. And we won an award 2 years in a row for Entrepreneur Podcast to be interviewed on, one of the top 10. So, but we've worked on it. So it's like starting a business if you're really serious about it, and you have to overcome obstacles and you have to find new ways. And the marketing for podcasts with AI and everything is changing every minute. I just went to something on Sunday and I couldn't believe what this marketing agency was doing with AI.
Interesting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So we are going to hear that.
Yeah.
Quick question. Somebody on here says they can't see the PowerPoint on the screen. Can I
The
share
screen
that?
behind us?
Yeah, they can't see that.
That's in my Canva. I don't have it on that computer to share.
Okay.
I wonder, I don't.
Okay, sorry guys. You can see it behind us though, right?
So it says, know your why, fun, hobby, educate, and drive business, build a brand. So we'll read the PowerPoint. Then when you go to see the YouTube video, it will be there.
Great.
Should we go to the next one? Because Rob can add, he can embellish. So choose a theme and format. So I know you can't see this very well, but this is fishes swimming. And this fish is a different color and he's going the other way. So from the podcast conferences that we've been to and everybody we've talked to, you have to find your niche. You cannot be a Joe Rogan and just ramble on for hours about whatever pops into your brain anymore. You have to, there are millions, billions of people in the world. You only need a few thousand, right? You need the people that are really interested in what you want to talk about. And if you ever want to get sponsors and advertisers and everything, this is another piece of marketing, they want a targeted audience to put their message in front of. So somebody that's selling luxury cars doesn't want somebody who rides a bicycle everywhere, isn't interested in buying a car, right? So really figure out your niche, because not only do the people listening like to know what they're going to be hearing, but Google and now ChatGPT, and so ChatGPT and all the other ones are called large language models. Has everybody used ChatGPT in here?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. So everybody knows ChatGPT. There's other ones too, but they go online and they look and see what's on there, and they want to know what you're talking about. And the podcast directories want to know what you're talking about. And if Apple looks at your podcast and can't figure out what it's about, then they're not going to offer it up for other people to listen to. So you really have to niche. And I know that's hard to do, because like I have a couple different podcasts, because I have different niches. So one of them is about cats, and one of them is about business. And
And one is about ghosts.
about ghost stories.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
it's what they call scripted fiction. It's a storytelling podcast. So what I'm doing with that is I'm telling a ghost story, and then I'm overlaying images the whole way through that I make in Canva. So I'm waiting for the AI to catch up. When the AI catches up, then hopefully I'll be able to make a whole video to go with it. But in the meantime, I'm doing still shots along a timeline as I tell the ghost story. So yeah, I kind of screwed that one up on YouTube, and I can tell you how later. But so I'm rebranding it and renaming it, and I am going to do it because I love doing it. It's just it's my real fun one, right?
Yeah.
So Sonia, what do you think about the solo versus co-host versus interview?
I think that's also a personal preference. Are you trying to also brand yourself? Are you trying to brand a show? Are you trying to brand an idea? Are you trying to brand a topic, a thought? Like, what is the point of it? And can you handle it? I mean, Gina, you could
Yeah.
probably speak to this
Yeah.
because you're doing
Doing
it with somebody.
Yeah.
Here,
So
turn your mic towards you.
yeah. Can you all see me?
No.
If I lean in?
No.
I have to lean in, right?
You guys can switch over this way, because this slide is not.
So, I have a co-host on my podcast, on our podcast, but, and that kind of just evolved. I came to a very good friend of mine, Ashley Crane, who we met in acting class years ago. And we shared a similar love for faith and storytelling. And I said, well, what do you think if we just found as many people as we could to tell us their God wink? That was something that was coming to me as what I would call it, when sort of God winks at you, right? And she said, yeah, let's run with it. So how we did it is she brought in 5 people, I brought in, or, 3 and 4, whatever it was. We had about 8 episodes. And if it was her guest, she sort of led the interview, and I would jump in with my questions. And if it was my guest that I brought in, I would lead it and she would jump in. So, but we would have a pre-interview, and we would have a day that we would call the guests separately, pre-interview them, and sort of set up sort of the dynamic of the interview. Then when we actually went to record, the guest kind of knew what the shape of the interview was going to be. But it still stayed spontaneous. And we found we had some obstacles. We were talking over each other. When I was engaged, she would have to be engaged and realize she was on camera. There's all these little things that we found along the way that we had either cut around or say, okay, can't do that again. So, to your point, Elizabeth, you learn as you go, and that's okay. I mean, Sonia, you know this better than anyone. We were in television in front of a camera studio for 25 years or so. So our expectation maybe would be, yeah, it's got to all just be together and perfect, right? But when you're creating it and producing it, you have to be patient and really get in there and be vulnerable and be patient with yourself.
And I think we were learning as we went.
And we were
when
going,
acting
we worked
too,
it.
so-
We just had a lot of people that made us look good,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Just made us look good.
Right. But I think, again, it depends. Like for myself, I'm developing a podcast. I'm a coach, but I
Yeah.
also have developed something called Monetization, which integrates mindset and movement. And so I am tweaking currently a walking podcast of Monetize. So where I will both be, sometimes I'll be solo, where I'll be actually just coaching as I'm going, and other times I'll actually be coaching somebody as we are both walking. Yeah, it's a little works in progress. I'm trying to do GoPro things so we can see where we're going, but there's a little sound issues. But anyway, but that's very much the intention of that, is to brand what I do and to brand myself. And so I think that's a bit of the decision of what it is that you're trying to do. I think often with somebody, it's helpful sometimes to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. It's helpful to have a second person in the loop, right?
I did
And
want to say too, yeah. So co-host is great. You can share the pain, share the work,
Yeah.
and the glory.
and the glory. But interview is really, I think for marketing is one of the best ways to do it, because so just an example. So we had this woman on the Passage to Profit show. It's an interview show. And some people have a big following, some don't. She put it out. We put out a YouTube short about her. We got more views. I mean, everything went through the roof because she put it out to her people. We put it out. Her people saw it. And so if you can get people that you interview who are willing to promote their appearance on your show for you, then it doubles what you can do, or triples. No matter, every time you interview somebody, you ask them to put it on their social media. So I really like the interview style too, because you can get people that are experts. And so we have people that are entrepreneurs that are experts in different fields. And I will tell you, I have learned so much from these people. It's just been amazing, an amazing ride for me. But as far as marketing, it makes it more interesting too. I mean, people do come for the hosts. People, you're like their TV, you're like you watch the TV shows and it's like they're your friends, these people on TV, and oh my God, did she have the baby yet? And oh no, what did her mother-in-law do? But people come for the host. So we were told when we started the radio show, and we do encourage this, to share a little bit about yourself with your listeners. So, maybe like, oh my gosh, I had to go down to Philly and it took me 5 hours to get there. The traffic was so bad, but I saw this really cool thing, or whatever. So I really like the interview. And then
I will say this, if you're doing an interview thing, make it easy for your guests to share. So if you can give them all of the information, so that all they have to do is pop it up on their social media and maybe write something, I just did this podcast, that is huge. You will get much better return on them actually doing what you're kind of asking them to do. It's almost expected, and you'd hope that somebody on your show would want to share it. But I do think it makes it much easier if you share everything with them. So here are the links, here's here's the,
Yeah.
And
the-
we'll-
That
yeah.
sort of sets them up. That's
Yeah,
great. That's
it
great.
really does.
Yeah.
So, and just have that, you can just send it out every time you have a guest.
And we'll talk about that a little later, but there is software now where you can pull out clips. And
Yeah.
so if you pull out a clip of them and you send it to them and say, please share this, that makes it very easy for them to share. So I
Right.
agree. Yeah. So that's what we
And
do.
all of the links, I think that's the key, because that might be something that's going to stop somebody
Right.
to do that.
Yeah, so we have a marketing assistant that helps us with this. It is hard to do it all yourself.
Yes.
I will say, if you're willing to spend the money on software, there is this one. I haven't tried it yet, but it will take long form content and make 27 pieces of social media content for different platforms. But it's expensive. It's like $250 a month or something, or it was. I don't know what it is now. So we just have our marketing assistant do it instead.
But there are some
There
of
are
the
other ones, yeah.
some of the other
Yeah, one that's really good is you know which one that makes the short YouTube style clips. Can't think of it right now. I'll put it in the show notes, or I'll put it in the email recap from this, or on the YouTube notes. Because this will go on our YouTube channel too. Did you have a question?
I do. So I'm sitting here imagining, when you talk about it, I'm sitting here imagining this is live.
yeah.
Do you do them live, or that you stream them, or is everything just, it's done and taped and then edited?
It could be both.
You both?
It can
How
be both.
comfortable
I
are
would,
you?
yeah, I think
Yeah,
it is.
I've been on a podcast that was live. and I pre-recorded mine because it was our first time and I just felt more safe
Yeah.
doing that. And for the guest as well, to protect the guest. But on a live, it's nice. It's a quick turnaround for them. They don't have to go back and spend another a week going back and doing the editing. So it depends on how comfortable you are with your format.
I think a lot of people start with tape and then will
Maybe
throw
get
in
better.
some live, or maybe then
Yeah.
ultimately convert to live. But you've got a lot of experience. So for you, you
Yeah,
might be ready to just go
I mean,
crazy.
It's like, you're on and you're live and
Yeah.
it's frightening and,
I think it's my personal feeling is that it's less about you messing up, because I think people
Right.
sort of expect that these days. They're like okay with that. It's part of the personality. It's the technical side.
Yes,
It's
that all
what
has to be
technical issues, especially if you're interviewing. Is the person coming in? Are they coming in on
Right.
time? Is the connection right? Is the
Right.
sound right? Is the light right? Is there a bobble? Is there blah, 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 blah?
that's.
Endless amounts, right?
Yeah.
And
If-
so,
if you have a crew.
yeah.
It's, business side of it, the finance of doing it between, just because I'm gearing everything up to do it myself.
Right.
Sure. Right.
Or, one person
Sure.
helping, but other than that, and I know with all this going on, you have more than one camera, you need a crew. Yeah, especially to do it live.
You
To do
do, and I was on a live one. It was one guy though, I
One-
think,
yeah,
but
it
he
was
might
mine
have had some tech help, but everything's screwed up. We lost connection,
Yep.
everything, he was in India. But we just made the best, where it's like the show must go on.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
we got back
Uh-huh.
on, we continued. In person, I feel it's always better if you can do it in person. You
Yeah.
can't these days though.
What do you
You
mean in person?
Like
I
if,
mean,
Guests
what
in
we-
person in studio,
like if
like
Sonia
here.
was my
Yeah,
guest,
right.
I'd be right. We'd be together.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We have more of a connection
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of ways, but
In content, like when you create a podcast,
Mhm.
if you, I know, I mean, I follow a lot of like spiritual mindset type of podcast. That's what I'm interested in. Sometimes their interviews are in person, sometimes like, all right, does that matter content wise for the viewer and how it attracts the viewer? Because when you're in person has a completely different energy, like his room is all decorated, but when you're doing like, whatever you do on Zoom, however content, how you produce it, both people are in separate spaces, so that has a different visual stimulation. I'm wondering if that does anything for success or marketing for a podcast.
Yes, I'll repeat the question. So does the user experience change dramatically between in person and on Zoom? So are people watching your podcast more likely to watch in person because they feel the Zoom is flat? And in our experience, so what happened for us during COVID was we were able to get really high level guests, much better guests than we've been getting because they didn't have to come into the studio in New York. And so people enjoyed that content more. So, and everybody was used to Zoom then. I kind of feel like now people will watch it on Zoom and they'll watch it on YouTube because we're also used to that. But I do think people kind of like the in-person better. What do you think?
Yeah. You wouldn't
It's-
happen to be talking about Next Level Soul podcast, would you? Because I just noticed he does a lot in person with a really beautiful
He
like
just got
background,
busy
and then
with
all of a
his
sudden he's gone
studio.
Zoom, and I noticed it, and I was like, oh, I kind of missed the room. It's not enough for me to not watch.
Not enough, but.
So I think
built his
that might
audience.
right.
He built his audience, but what I've read or learned, and I know is the consistency of how you do things on a visual, because I'm a
yes,
Visual.
artist.
yes.
There's something about that, and if you make a change, the audience will go with you into
With
the
you.
change once you produce this work, hook them into your content because there's already an emotional connection and interest in it.
So can you repeat that, Sonia?
Yeah, so I think there was a question about the visual, and as Elizabeth had mentioned, the question was, is it going to matter whether it's in person and then it switches to Zoom? Is that going to matter? And that essentially, if they've established a relationship, a feeling of rapport, and hooked you in, or made you a fan, then you'll probably tolerate whatever. I do think in some situations, if they do go live, or even if you're on Zoom, you are creating a bit of a brand. You are creating a bit of a feeling, right? A lot of those have a feeling. And so as long as you're able to recreate a bit of that feeling, that essence, I think that also translates. So I think it's important to try to remember that.
I guess not the lead to me.
Yeah, it is. So the
Yeah.
background is just as important. It is a piece of the marketing thing because it tells the story. And as a visual artist, you know that. So what you have in the back does say something. And that's going to matter a little bit differently. If you have a business podcast, you might want it to have more of a business feel. If you have a spiritual podcast, you want it to have a little more of that kind of, down to earth, homey, like spiritual feel. Oops.
So.
And we have drum roll, Rob Greenley.
Let me get started.
Yeah.
Can I get you a water after driving for
Oh,
millions?
that's
of
okay. We
miles?
can just get going. That's fine.
Okay, so we're through the second or third slide. Pretty much. So I was gonna have you drive the bus here, or you can sit where Gina is, whatever's easy.
Why
Do you want to drive?
Why
the
don't you
bus?
switch over and I'll switch here.
Let
You
me
can-
fix this.
That's fine.
So, so I have
Might
to
be
say that
easier to go the other way to get. to the
Okay, yeah,
end.
that's true.
keep
think
It's
so.
now
short.
on short leashes here, so you
Thank you
have
for
to be
answering that.
kind of careful. So why don't you introduce yourself, or do you want Sonia to introduce you, or me to introduce you, or?
I don't know. It depends
Why'd
what
you-
we're prepared for.
Okay, why don't you introduce yourself? You know what?
Okay.
Ah.
Let's do it this.
Here, so let's do.
This is what happens when you go live. How does it feel?
I need the mouse.
Okay.
Exactly. It does.
Say horror stories like messed up so bad.
Right.
It's like, the guy goes, nope, this is live.
Oh gosh, right. Exactly.
There we go.
You were there.
Most people
Right.
don't go live and they also edit it a little bit. There are softwares,
Okay,
AI
so
softwares
If you
that
wanna-
will
so
cut
that-
out some of the
Sure.
ums and the
Okay.
ands and the to the filler
Get
words.
that off of there.
Yeah. There we
So
go.
You work hard to pay attention and not do those things, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean,
And your training may be that, but your guests, if
Yeah.
you have a guest, may not have that training. And so that may vary, but if it's just you could probably pull it off.
So, as promised, Rob Greenley is here. Drove down from Connecticut, had, how many hours were you on the road?
About 4.5.
Oh my God, give this guy a hand.
It's always the risk of coming down here. It's just.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, it's great
So-
to be here. And it, as usual for me and my path in life, talking about podcasting.
Yeah, so he started the Podcast Hall of Fame. He's a member. He's been in the podcast world forever, pretty
Yeah.
much,
Yeah,
right?
well, since it started, so if that tells you anything, so.
But you also did marketing. You were an executive in marketing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say sales and marketing is a big part of my background. There's no question. And then that kind of led me into getting involved in media. So I was working a lot with television and radio and billboards and bus boards and all this kind of stuff. And so it was kind of a natural extension for me to have an interest in the radio and TV space and getting involved in it. And it evolved kind of when I walked into a radio station and created a radio show. So that's kind of how it all got started for me. And I just took that content out and made it available online. So it's kind of what my path has been. And then most of the time that I've done this has been working for podcasting platforms. So, Libsyn, Podcast One, Microsoft, and other large platforms as well over my journey. So I've had a lot of exposure to working with big and small content creators and have worked with the big platforms on the listening side, have actually run a listening platform myself. So I can I can kind of relate to all aspects of the medium, which put me in a spot where I can really, I think, share some ideas about kind of the big picture of podcasting and where it's going and how it works and what's currently going on in the medium today. So I see behind me, you've kind of moved through to themes and formats, and I think this is a very important topic.
Yeah, so we kind of did this one from our perspective,
did,
but we'd like
okay.
to hear whatever you would like to add to
Okay.
it. We kind of went deep into niching but
Yeah,
whatever you want to add from your
yeah,
experience.
yeah. I won't add too much to this because I'm sure that you guys have covered it pretty closely, but it's really an important thing for you to think about as being a content creator is kind of what's your format, kind of what niche are you in, who's your audience. All those are important things to consider before you start a show. And if you have a show already, these are always important topics to think about in the evolution or the development of your show, is that, we can always get better and making improvements, adding capabilities, adding formats is something that if you're a podcaster, you need to kind of be willing to play around with a little bit, because there may be a format or a way of doing your show that may be better, right? So you have that opportunity for improvement. And I think that's where this conversation around formats comes into, because I've found here over the last couple of years that solo is a pretty powerful format for deeper connections with your audience. So if you only do a conversational show with a guest on the interview side, you basically are sharing the microphone with another person, right? So your brand is being split. Your own personal brand is being split with your guest. And so I've been playing around more with this model of trying to have a solo episode and a guest conversation, or just doing all solo. And if you see what's happening on YouTube today, if you look at the kind of bigger landscape around video podcasting, you kind of see both. There's shows that will do solo formats, and then there's shows that will do conversational formats, and you're seeing co-host type of shows as well. I would say that the one-on-one conversation is probably the most popular on the video side today, but the solo shows have a completely different dynamic to them, and they're actually really, really fun to do. They can be a little bit more simple from a production standpoint, as well as preparation standpoint, because you're not having to coordinate with other people. The other big trend in the medium right now is in-person conversations, kind of like what we're doing here. But that's hard to do. Not everyone can attract a guest to come to their home office or something like that. So it's definitely a challenge to try and play in this game, as podcasting is becoming really the media now. And I think that's the key takeaway to really think about here is podcasting is now much more than just a niche medium. It is where people are looking to get trusted information now. And so you do have a responsibility to create the best show that you can and share the most accurate and current information that you have. And that's the power of having really, really great guests. But also your own research and your own kind of skills development is important here too, because that will apply to your solo shows. So, I think,
Rob,
yeah,
if
go
I
ahead.
could ask you a question,
Yeah.
because we were just talking about it before you arrived, about from a marketing perspective,
Right.
solo versus interview, because interview you get the advantage of being able to market it
Yep.
through somebody else
Yep.
versus the solo. However, I have actually heard many podcasters say that they do both,
Yep.
that their solo ones actually often do better.
Yes. On
And
the
that's so
audience side.
interesting on the
Right.
audience side.
Right.
And so from a marketing perspective, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me just make a little bit of a comment on the solo side, because oftentimes what I see happening is people create a show and you're the host of the show and you're having this conversation. What you're doing is you're building up expectations with your audience that they want to hear more from you as the host. So what you're really doing is you're satisfying really, if you're doing a good job as a host, you're actually satisfying the interest that your audience has in learning more about your thoughts. So I think from a marketing standpoint, I think they both have strengths and weaknesses. The solo cast can be a better way to build your personal brand and your personal relationship with the audience and new audience as well, where the interview conversational format helps build your skills and knowledge because you're talking with probably a trusted expert. So you're actually networking with this other individual who can help you promote the show, if they're willing to do that. Not every guest is willing to put forth a lot of effort to promote your show, even though you had them on an interview. That's why it's so important to create a unique interview with every guest that you have, because oftentimes that guest that you have has been on many other shows. So you have to make sure that whatever you're doing with that guest needs to be unique, because if it is, then the guest will be more likely to promote it.
Should we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So you're driving, so
I am
if you
driving.
just like, okay, there.
There we go. All right.
Okay.
All right. So now we're back
Ooh,
into
Let me move this way.
the nuts and bolts of podcasting. It is
That's
the
good.
keywords and titles. And your title, this is a very confusing area in podcasting, because one of the biggest podcasters in the world, Mr. Joe Rogan, if you look at his title, he only puts his episode number and the guest name. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. So, but when you're the biggest podcast in the world, I don't think it really matters necessarily that you put a lot of detail in your title. And he gets top guests. I do think he's missing a little bit of contextual opportunity there with his titles. So that's the takeaway, is oftentimes these keywords are important for search and discovery. I wouldn't say that Joe has an issue with search and discovery. So he's playing a different game than the rest of us have to play. But it's important to give your potential audience, people who are coming through looking for an episode to watch or trying to find your show, that you give them, context for what is going to be offered in the content. So, but yet you have to walk this line of making those keywords effective for you in the search engines, and increasingly even AI, which is indexing podcasts more and more every day. I mean, go into Chat GPT and do a search for a episode on this topic, and it will come back with a list of podcasts under that topic. So people are increasingly using AI the same way they use Google. What the difference between these two is context, right? It's going to be much more precise in its recommendations to you, where Google was not that precise. And so this even makes keywords even more important, but it also, AI is probably getting into the content too. So in some ways, maybe keyword density and these concepts of titling and things like that are not as important when we live in the world of AI, because it's going to contextually know what's in the content. So this is the game that we have to play today, is catering to really two platforms, Google.com and AI.
Rob, do you use AI to seek out the best words, the best
Yeah, I think you can use
up front before you start?
I wouldn't actually rely on it 100%. I'm not sure it's as smart as we like to think it is. That human intelligence and that human context to what you're doing as a content creator is still very important. And plus a lot of these platforms don't really want you to share too many keywords. What they want you to do is only share the ones like the hashtags and things like that, the top 5 that are most relevant. Because once you get much beyond that, then these platforms start to think that you're trying to spam them with keywords. So it's trying to make sure that whatever keywords that you're using is really relevant to the content.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting too. So podcast marketing, so traditional marketing techniques in some cases apply, and in some cases kind of don't. So,
Right.
right. And
It's a different medium, yeah.
it is a different medium. And I looked for a podcast marketer all over the place for this meetup, and I couldn't find any agency or anybody, but then I remembered you and I'm like, oh, Rob's the perfect person because he's got marketing and he's
Yeah.
the podcast guru, but it's always the battle, isn't it? And when we did our website for Gearhart Law years ago, it's always the battle. Do you want catchy content or do you want Google to index your site? And so you have to have keywords. I mean, when we first did it in 2006, we had to put the word patent on the homepage like 25 times. You remember that? But you want it to be not boring and catchy. And so it's an art. I
Oh,
think.
it is, definitely. You're never gonna get it perfectly right, so.
Yeah.
And from a marketing perspective too, you want to have the subject or the topic in the first couple of
Yeah, I
words
think that's
is another
very
key.
important.
So thinking of that
Yeah.
in terms of your title.
And sometimes that's hard to do because
Mhm.
sometimes the best words to describe the topic are too long or something like that, because you do have an
Mhm.
issue with these platforms truncating your titles. So you
Mhm.
don't, so when I say truncating, basically cutting it off, right? So it only displays, like maybe 25 characters, but maybe you put in there 50 or something, or 40 or something like that, and the user just can't see it. So that's what puts a lot of pressure on. Is it the visibility that you're shooting for, or is it the full capable length of that title? Because that's what Google's going to see, is the full length of the title.
Mhm.
The user's only going to see just the shorter version. So as you think about this, go ahead and fill out the amount of characters in the title, but just realize that first like 3 words is really going to be the words that are seen by a potential listener. Yeah.
So,
Question about that.
yeah. Mhm.
There's the keyword titles like per topic that say you have 10 podcasts, it's each topic. But then there's the keywords like the title of your podcast. And so like just starting a new one, I know there's one other podcast with a similar title. And then there's other people who use that same title as a subtitle. So I asked ChatGPT, how do you differentiate all that
Right,
and make
right.
it use for your marketing? So I'm wondering if you have any feedback on that.
Can you repeat
Outside
the
of
question?
ChatGPT, do you understand what I'm saying?
Uh,
So there's the title of
Right.
your own podcast, like say if it's
Right.
called Inside. Well, Inside anybody could use
Right.
inside, right? Or
Yeah.
Inside the Zone, right?
Yeah.
Or the word sacred, or sacred visions. Well, anybody can use the sacred visions. It's pretty a broad subject.
right.
But then if you categorize that as your title, a little more specific, sacred visions of the divine, of the divine world or whatever, right? Sacred visions of storytelling. It could be multiple things.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that is in reference also to this for research.
Can you repeat the question briefly?
Yeah, I think it's a question that really kind of dives into this element of main titles of your series, of your podcast, and then any kind of subtitles that might be used as a contextual reference, either in your marketing or on your website or whatever, and how there can be confusion between various podcasts that may have similar kind of topic themes to them, and words that are used. And I think it's a difficult thing to walk, because there are a lot of podcasts that have very similar names, and they're maybe going after a slightly different market because of the combinational use of those words. So, it's a difficult line to walk. I think what it points out to me is knowing your competitors, right, of sorts, and knowing what the other shows that are in the market are doing and how they're kind of portraying their shows to their audience, and how that's different than yours, and how you can maybe find openings in that to do better marketing with your show, and then do some keyword research too, to figure out which of those top 5 words that are being used and how they rank in Google and other platforms. And that can also be done for YouTube as well. So
Yeah.
I hope that answered.
Yeah, I use ChatGPT for that. So if I come up with a podcast title, I'll say, is there a podcast named this? And it's usually pretty good at giving the ones that are close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like a thesaurus of sorts.
Yeah.
right? Where you
Yeah.
can find all sorts of similar words to describe the same thing. Yeah.
But I also use Perplexity for
Yeah.
these things, and I don't know if you guys have used Perplexity. That's a whole nother conversation, but it's a little more in-depth than ChatGPT, and it operates a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And I feel like I get better research answers from Perplexity. But I use them both. I see what ChatGPT says and I see what Perplexity says. So,
Cover your bases.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah. So I think we covered that one. Oh, I guess the last one is the catchy, click, enticing title. So that's really kind of the magic sauce of all this, is trying to walk this balance between keyword density, but is that title boring? Does it
Yeah.
attract someone to want to click on it? This is especially the case with video with YouTube, because those thumbnails are so important.
Mhm.
And so you're really telling a story. So the thumbnail has like maybe just a few words on it, kind of emotional graphics, and then the title of the episode, which is in text below, kind of continues that story of clarification for your audience, so they know what to expect in the video. This is all art, not a lot of science.
And do you feel the clickbait title still grab
Well,
the
it does.
watch this or you'll
Yeah.
die, you know,
No,
that
I-
kind of thing?
Mr. Beast certainly
Right.
gets a lot of mileage.
I mean, unfortunately, I think it does work. I think it does create a little bit of a kind of a toxic environment as well. If you look at it from one perspective, that people are making popular videos now that are kind of like doomsday videos, because people are very attracted to that type of content. So it's the enticement that gets the clicks, but yet the thumbnail and the title needs to convert that interest into an action, right? Which is actually watching the video. So you have to deliver on it too. You can't just
Well-
say that the world is ending.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
your content has to match what you say it's going to
Yep.
be, right? Otherwise, yeah,
And
people never watch it again.
and YouTube picks that up because they track what the conversion is from the thumbnail to actually watching the video, and then how long a person watches the video. So if your video, if people click your video and the watch time goes like this, just drops off a cliff in the first 30 seconds, there's probably a mismatch between expectations and
Yeah.
the tease.
And you get penalized heavily by
Oh,
YouTube
yeah,
for
of
that.
course, of course.
Yeah.
So it's okay. All right. Well, this is kind of similar to the prior topic in some ways. Content, audiences, and SEO. So there are different audiences out there for different types of content. So this is an important thing for you to consider with your show, even if it's an existing show, to evaluate where you're at around the content that you're producing, and does that content that you've kind of fallen into of sorts or started to gravitate towards, does it really match with the audience that you're trying to reach with your content? And it's
Mhm.
sometimes hard to know this, right? Because I know when I started podcasting, it was really about the content that I had an interest in. But really, I think today, and increasingly experts are saying this too, it's not just me, is that online media now isn't really social media anymore, it's interest media, which means that if the topic or the content is of interest to someone, then that's the success metric, right? Creating content based on my own interests may map to an audience member, but there's a good chance that it won't. So I can't just make content like I used to, which was like all the topics that I did for my radio show for many years were topics driven by my interest to know an answer to these questions, right?
Mhm.
But increasingly, what we need to do in the market now is learn from your audience. What questions are they interested in knowing the answers to? And that's driving a lot of what's going on YouTube. And that's where we get into this clickbait that we were just talking about before, is that there are research tools that content creators are using now to find these niche interest topics, right?
Mhm.
And so we see a lot of copycatting going on too. And a lot of this kind of activity hasn't necessarily come to podcasting yet from an audio perspective. But I think it's coming, where people can really have deep analytics around what people are interested in learning and hearing about, and what's the current trending topic that people are wanting to find an answer to,
Yeah.
and creating content to cater to that market. That's kind of at the cutting edge of where YouTube is today.
And that's where Perplexity and ChatGPT
Yep.
come in, because I was just telling our marketing assistant today, go ask it for Gerhardt Law, what kind of questions are people asking about intellectual property in
Yep.
2025? And the more specific you get with those
Yep.
query engines, the better answers you get. But I just heard something on Sunday about this marketing agency was presenting. And if you've ever done traditional marketing, there's personas. You develop a client persona, right? So for Rob, so his persona is he's a young, middle-aged
Yeah,
man.
I can't be both. I don't think.
Lives in Connecticut, loves media, loves technology, loves sharing knowledge, etc. All the attributes I can think of, Rob.
Yeah.
Well, what they're doing now is they're saying, okay, make me a chatbot or make me a avatar person that in AI, an AI person that is Rob, but the AI version of Rob, and let me run all my campaigns past him and see what he thinks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that blew me away. It's like, I mean,
Yeah, I think you can train your AI to understand these things and to analyze your content and to make recommendations on who that typical persona might be. And just like Elizabeth said, a persona is kind of like a picture of a person. It could be male or female. It can be a certain age, has an interest in following information on Facebook or likes to listen to podcasts. So you have this profile of this person, and AI can help you map that to your content. But you do have to kind of play around with some data. I think you still need to do some audience research. And that's as simple as maybe putting together a simple Survey Monkey kind of survey that you share with your audience. And let's say you get 10 responses back that answers 10 questions about who they are, who the audience is. And then you feed that into the AI, and then you map it to the content or a bunch of your transcripts and have it chew on it a little bit to figure out, what's the best persona for your podcast. And then that can be used as a tool to help you come up with topics that are interest to that particular persona given your genre. So there's a lot of layers to this, but increasingly what we're going to see with AI is people combining sources of information together to come up with an answer versus just asking a very simple question. Because I've been feeding AI all sorts of contextual information about my health and my blood test scores and all this kind of stuff to come up with a health report. And so that's a real powerful tool and thing to start thinking about. Now, granted, you're disclosing a lot to your AI, so you're going to have to trust it
Yeah.
to some degree.
Well,
Yeah.
people do have their own personal AIs now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And then there's what they're calling agentic AIs now,
Right.
which is a whole nother
That's
meetup,
a
but
whole other topic.
it's
Yeah.
just a little piece of program that does these boring admin tasks that you don't want to do. Yeah, so I think when it gets to that kind of stuff, there's a lot going on that it can cost a lot of money if you really want to be top of the heap, but there are still some things you can do for free yourself.
Do you ever engage your audience in really trying to figure out what they want to hear, just in terms of, are there any kind of strategies that you use besides the general, like, hey, pop it on social media? Like, is there other ways?
Yeah, I think that the way that's probably been the most popular, and this has got a kind of dual purpose, is that Survey Monkey research. You ask them 10 questions. I wouldn't go much more than 10 questions. So just keep them real simple, easy to answer, just kind of give you a snapshot of who your audience is. And that's the purpose of it. And what's their feeling about your content? Do you have any ideas for me about ways I can improve? Just ask really some basic questions. But it's also, ask your audience to send you an email or give them a way to get a hold of you and to share their thoughts about what you're doing with your show, and really just be candid with them and just say, I want your true, unfiltered, don't be nice. And because that's what you need. You need
Mhm.
honest feedback around what you're
do.
doing with your show, and that's so important.
Do you ever provide incentives to get them to
Well, you
actually?
can, yeah. I mean, I think you can give things away. You can, I think that's the easiest way is just,
Great giveaways, yeah.
for anybody that answers the survey, I'll do this or that for you.
Yeah.
right?
We
Right.
did that with Passage to Profit. Yeah.
So,
Excellent.
Hi, come on in. There's a chair over here. So we just,
Great.
Watch your step.
looks like you just came from
Growing.
work, Mildred.
And for those of you who are online, feel free to pop any questions you have into the chat. We will be answering them along the way.
yeah, I would love that. So,
So cover art.
all right, I got
letters,
another
thumbnail.
slide up here. So cover art, headers, and thumbnails. Well, we've talked a little bit about that up till this point. But these things are becoming increasingly important in the podcasting space too. I say that the thumbnails is the big issue in YouTube, but increasingly people are using episode level art with their audio podcasts. So, and those can be treated very similar to what you're doing with maybe your thumbnails for YouTube. So, keep these things in mind, that all of these ways of marketing your podcast, your audio podcasts, are also strategies that can learn from YouTube. So I think there's a lot of crossover here.
Can I ask you something real
Yeah.
quick about what you just said? So what I like to do with my podcast, I have a couple besides the one. Anyway, is I like to have the main cover art, but then I like to do a new cover for each episode. Is that
Yep.
necessary?
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say it's required or anything like
Okay.
that, but I do know that Apple finally in this last year supported their own tag in their RSS feed spec to support episode level art in
Oh,
the
okay.
Apple Podcast app. So they've added in the spec for a long time, but you couldn't see your episode level art in Apple for many, many years.
Mhm.
But other apps did. So it's an opportunity to get your message across around context about the episode. And
Mhm.
that's why it's so powerful in YouTube to have this contextual kind of theme thumbnail. Yeah, go ahead.
On the question of thumbnail art, the producers of our show, we have this debate all the time. So we review classic cinema.
Right.
So in the thumbnail, they prefer to showcase Cary Grant or whatever the movie that we're reviewing. Let's pick the lead actor or
right.
actress on there. But we want our faces on there too,
Right.
because we're trying to market ourselves as a brand.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So any thoughts? I mean, sometimes I see some podcasts or YouTube channels where the interviewer has an expression on their face, like they like something.
like-
It's like,
Mr. B is just,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
thoughts on that? Because I guess what they were sharing with us was that, well, the algorithm will pick out Cary Grant before they pick out your face because that's a more
Mhm.
notable
Yeah.
face.
Right.
So
But
the
I'm not
question,
sure. I'm not really.
yeah.
Going back
Yeah.
and forth with it.
Can you repeat the question quickly, summarize
Yeah, it's
it?
around the question what was around your thumbnail for YouTube and the use of faces
Mhm.
in your thumbnail. If that's something that you should do, and this tension between, well, what's the host's face? Do you want to present your co-hosts on your thumbnail versus like maybe the topic of your show's face, right? So like a lot of people use Elon Musk's picture or Donald Trump's picture in their thumbnail if they're talking about something related to those people because they're so familiar, right? And I think it does work to some degree, but if you're talking about a person like a Cary Grant or something like that, that maybe most modern people don't know what he looks like, right? It
Mhm.
may not be as impactful, right? But I agree with this tension that using your own faces as the co-hosts of the show, over time, that will become more important around the branding of your show and your own personal brand. So it's walking this line. I would do a lot of testing of it too, and try different ways of doing it and see what, see what the percentage clicks are. YouTube has a way to test 3 versions of your art in every episode that you make. So you can create 3 different versions, test all 3, see which one brings in the highest percentage of click action, because it'll tell you the percentage of each one of them, which one converts better.
So
And-
along
yeah.
those lines too, Rob, so I have heard multiple times
Mhm.
that your picture should be on your cover because it builds trust.
Yeah, it
Do you
does.
think that's true?
Yeah, I think it is true, especially on your audio podcast,
Mm-hmm.
because, and it's also, I think it's important on your audio podcast that you have your picture on there, because really audio podcasts, you are the podcast really at the end of the day. Sure, there are a lot of successful podcasts that don't have their host on the cover art, and that does work as well. But oftentimes those are shows that the producing company or the network wants some flexibility on who they have as hosts. Right? So, sometimes they'll produce a show like the How Stuff Works podcast that iHeart actually owns now. They don't put the picture of their host on there because they want to bring in different hosts if they need to, right? So it's basically a talent is what it is. But if you're starting your own personal podcast and you're not going to replace yourself anytime soon, it's probably a good idea to put your picture on there.
Are there any AI softwares that you like to use for creating these thumbnails, or are there some that are your favorite?
Well, if you asked me that question about a year ago, I'd say none of them. They've definitely gotten a lot better. I say that the new model under Chat GPT, I think it's the Image 1 model that came out here recently. That does a pretty good job. It also does a good job with videos too. So Chat GPT 4.0 or 4. I think I don't know if it's O or what it is. They have weird naming for their models, but it does a really good job. I think it's very important that you really maybe do 2 steps to the process. So you tell ChatGPT what you want to create in your thumbnail and have it write the prompt for you. Cut and paste that prompt that it generates and put it back into ChatGPT, and it will render a prompt that's compatible with it. Because if you just hand write out a prompt, it may not have the complexity in the prompt that the AI needs to do a good job with the thumbnail. And this is being increasingly done with the videos too, where you just tell the AI what you want to create in your video, and it writes the prompt, and you take that prompt and you use it to create the video.
You use Canva too.
I used Canva for this presentation, and Rob and I were able to collaborate on it. I love Canva. Canva does have its own AI function. It's
does.
Magic Media. It doesn't really work that well though.
Yeah, I heard that they got the upgrade to the latest AI video model from Google.
Oh, they did. I haven't been there to see that.
The VEO3 model, which is a highly sought after model right now to create like 8 to 15-second videos that are photorealistic, full motion with sound and the whole works. So we're going to see a real revolution, and we're already starting to see it on the shorts platforms, where you're seeing just a lot of AI generated videos being published up.
I went to some, as I said, I went to this presentation Sunday, different people using AI for different things in this marketing agency. The little AI videos they showed blew me away, and
I
they
know.
showed deep fakes and everything too.
They are remarkable. There's no question about it. And it's really a glimpse of what the future looks like. And
So how do we keep up? So do we pay a marketing agency to tell us all this stuff? Do we try to figure it all out ourselves? Do we
Just ask AI.
I think it depends on
just ask AI?
And let them tell us.
Yeah. So Yeah, so there are a lot of people using a lot of different things, but AI is getting into every single thing. And one thing I just want to add, kind of off topic a little bit, not too much. There was the head of Summit Tech for the high schools, for the schools in Summit, and they are now teaching the children in the schools how to do these queries and how to make them. And what they do is they do one, and then they dig down, they like Sonia started at the very beginning, know your why. That's what you do with the queries, is you just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and the kids are learning that in school now.
Yeah, I think it does require, and I've struggled with it too, to think differently about how you use search, right? Because in some ways that's what you're doing here, but you're actually using search to create things, not necessarily just get a response back with some
Right.
information or maybe some links. You're actually in this creation mode now. And I just think that the sky's the limit on what we're going to see happen with this stuff. And it's going to get so good and so high quality and so realistic that it's going to likely, unfortunately, surpass what humans are capable of doing. I think our strengths are going to be more human related, more authenticity, more live experiences like this, which AI doesn't really do as good and isn't being built for that. So I think that there's strengths that humans have that can add to this mix, but I think AI is going to have a big place in the media consumption landscape too. There's a lot of talk right now that the influencer market, you know how these big brand personalities have really dominated the internet, creating videos online to sell products and pitch products and things like that. Those are going to be replaced by these AI bots that are going to be, you know, it's going to be cheaper, faster, higher quality. The clients or the advertisers can use these in a more precise way to get the exact message that they want. This whole concept of a redo or a remake or something like that will probably go away. So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that the market is strong for human influencers as you look to the future.
No, one thing they came up with was curiosity is a human trait that AI doesn't have.
Right.
But the other thing is, that's why, like, I tell people, if you make a little flub, it's okay, because then people know it's not AI. Right? Don't necessarily edit those all out.
Case in point tonight, right?
Exactly. Things
So-
falling down.
So you want your podcast name in bold. So when people are looking on their phone, your podcast cover is the size of a dime.
Yeah.
So that's why we said readable and small size on a phone. Your
Exactly.
picture in bold name, bold podcast.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that a lot of people miss, is that small text on your thumbnail is worthless space, right? I think, and to some degree that even applies to YouTube on those thumbnails as well. Putting a bunch of small text on there is not going to help you. What you have to do is just find like maybe up to 3 to at the most 5 words on your thumbnail, and just stick with that. Don't put in a bunch of small logos or links to anything or URLs or anything like that. Leave that stuff off. Really, what you need to think about is that this is a big, bold billboard that you're creating for your show. And has it bold letters, highly colorful, but have the imaging support the message, I think is the key way to think about it.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So, let me see. See what the next one is here.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about this first sentence, because I saw some data from an empirical study where they asked 1,000 people, and they said YouTube had outpaced both Spotify and Apple.
Well, there's a variety of things that you have to look at. Is that these surveys look at different data sets, right? And they look at different ways of breaking this stuff out, right? There's been people that have said that Spotify is the biggest podcast platform in the world too. It may be that Spotify has more users. So if you're counting the number of users of the app versus Apple or something like that. So let's say Spotify has 50 million users that have watched a podcast in the last year, and Apple has 30 million users that has watched a podcast through their app. it's a little bit like comparing apples to oranges, because Apple has more consumption of podcasts
Okay.
on it than Spotify does. So that's where these researchers or these surveys kind of tell the story that they want to tell to paint a certain picture. But Apple Podcasts is still the biggest podcast consumption platform, because it's all around how many episodes does any given user consume on the platform. If you look at Spotify has a lot of other competing things in the app. They have music, audiobooks, and video now, that is competing for that user's attention. And so that's a key thing to look at. And that's kind of where this title at the top of it, that YouTube is the second largest podcast share in 2025, because the research around usage and consumption has put it in the second place, which is still dramatic, because Spotify is now third, right? So Spotify is not doing really very well on the video side. So they wanted to be a video platform, but they just haven't been able to get their act together on it quite yet. I don't know, do you guys want to add some context?
Oh, we're just looking to see if there were comments. No, I agree with you, and it's interesting. So if you were to tell somebody, so I tell people when they're starting podcasts to start them on Spotify, because I feel like Spotify is going to be around for a long time. They have a free version. They do have video if you want to go that way and pay for it. Apple isn't as good about sharing, which is what killed them. This is why Microsoft outpaced them. You remember that. So that's what happened to Apple back in the 80s. They didn't want to share, and Microsoft came along and wiped out their market share. So I feel like for starting a podcast, what platform would you choose?
Well, it depends on what we're talking about here. If we're talking about actually hosting and having a platform to distribute your podcast on, is, the podcast hosting platforms, the largest ones. Now, Spotify basically bought a podcast hosting platform. It was called Anchor, and incorporated it into their platform. So they have kind of this ability to host a podcast and distribute a podcast, as well as be a consumption platform. So you kind of have to think about it on kind of two ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
Now, the hosting side with Spotify, for the Spotify for Creators platform, is a free platform. So you don't have to pay to host your podcast over there.
Right.
But Spotify does have a paid platform, and it's called Megaphone. And so a lot of big creators work with Spotify on the hosting side with Megaphone, and that's a paid hosting platform. So, the podcast hosting space has gotten very complicated. There's lots of different players in there that are specializing in supporting video and audio. Other platforms are just audio only. When podcasting started back in 2004 to 2006 standpoint, podcasting was audio and video in the very early days of podcasting, which kind of confuses the situation. There's really only 3 major podcast hosting platforms today that support video podcasting, and that's Podbean, Libsyn, and Blueberry. So those are the 3 that were the earliest podcast hosting platforms, and they support video podcasting, which means that you can host a video file in an RSS feed on those platforms and distribute an MP4 file as well as an MP3 file. So you have that option on those platforms. And Apple is the biggest platform that still supports video podcasting.
But I post to YouTube separately. So when
Yeah.
I upload to the other audio ones, but I upload to YouTube separately, and I do things a little different for YouTube, right?
Well, you can't use an RSS feed to get content into, or get video content into YouTube. It's the same thing with Spotify. You can't use an RSS feed to publish video into their platform. That may change some point in the future. I don't know if it will, but increasingly these platforms want you to upload video to them directly. And that's what YouTube is doing, and that's what Spotify is doing. There's a whole big story about Spotify with video that's disrupting audio today. And it's got a lot of people upset at Spotify for doing that. So just to kind of tell you that story very quickly is that if you have an audio podcast in Spotify via RSS, so let's say you host on Buzzsprout or any of the podcast hosting platforms, and you go in and you create a Spotify for Creators account, and you want to upload video to be a companion to your audio program that you have in coming through an RSS feed. What Spotify is doing now is they're taking that video and taking the audio out of that video and replacing your audio episodes that came in through RSS. So people are being, their RSS feeds, audio RSS feeds are being disrupted by an upload of a video file.
That's
This
on
is-
Spotify.
This is only on Spotify that's doing this.
Is that bad?
Well, if you're monetizing your audio podcast off of your podcast host through programmatic advertising or dynamic ad insertion technologies, when you upload the video, you basically are wiping out that RSS feed audio
Oh,
show, which means that you just lost all that monetization. So there's shows that have been fully monetized through their audio feed in Spotify that have lost half their revenue by uploading video.
oh my God.
So sure, there's revenue opportunities around uploading video, but the amount of activity that you have to bring to Spotify in order to be qualified to have monetization inside of Spotify is like double what it is in YouTube. So it takes a lot of audience building over there to start making money. So Spotify is not doing the right thing right now. They'll probably eventually get it right. But
We
we'll
had
see.
some questions in the back here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question, and I think I got it just from everything you have gone over and
Okay.
in depth, thank you. Can you just kind of give a little quick what an RSS feed is and why
Yeah.
it's essential in reference to either
Yeah.
Spotify between video and audio? I understand what happened in that sense. but-
Yeah.
And I guess repeat the question.
Yeah, and I think that the question about what is an RSS feed and why it's important is a question that's interesting to me from the standpoint is that RSS has been historically the foundation of what a podcast is. And what's happened is that RSS is really not important to really anyone out there anymore, but it is still foundational to getting your audio podcast, or in some cases your video podcast, into all these listening platforms. So it's still a foundational technology that's being used to make all your episodes available to Spotify and to Apple, because it's basically a document that is generated by your host that lists all your episodes and has all your metadata, like your thumbnail. It has a link to your thumbnail, your cover art or your artwork for your show, all of your episode art, all of your descriptions, your titles for each of your episodes. That's the document that's shared with Spotify that allows it to populate all that stuff in its interface.
So people can find you.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's it,
So
yeah.
if you didn't have an RSS feed, you wouldn't have a podcast inside of Apple or even Spotify or the hundreds of other apps that are out there. So it's still a foundational technology. It's just that most audience members and even podcasters to some degree aren't really actively engaged in managing the RSS feed necessarily anymore. So it's kind of lost the consciousness of even a lot of podcasters. They just click a button now and that
Mhm.
RSS feed is sent to Spotify. They never even see the RSS feed. It just goes. It's a way for two computers to communicate to each other. Is really all it is.
Mm.
I have a question just because there's a number of people both online and even in this room that have just YouTube at this moment.
Right.
And
Mhm.
it's such a growing platform. It's just escalated. It almost begs the question of, is it going to overtake the podcast world and just be like, hey, just go YouTube? Or what are your thoughts on that? And
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely pushing in that direction. I think audio podcasting has a place. I think a good analogy is to think about this from all of our experiences of television versus radio, right? They have had a place in our lives that has been different. I don't know that YouTube is going to completely disrupt audio podcasting, just like television didn't disrupt radio. So I think you have this dual path that's going to continue. Though I think video is increasingly becoming pretty important to billions of people on this planet, and I think it's only going to get more so. With these shorts platforms and how people are consuming content today is leaning very heavily towards more and more video.
And from a marketing perspective, is video more important than audio if someone were starting out?
I think if you're starting out,
Good question.
I think it depends on what kind of content you want to make. If you have desire to do video, then jump in and do video. I think one of the challenges that we have in the market right now is that there are audio first creators and there's video first creators. And sometimes they like to cross over. Like if you're a video first creator, there's pathways to pull your audio out of your video and put them out as an audio podcast, right? And then if you're audio podcast, I think it's a little bit of a steeper hill to climb to get into video, because then you have to think about production, getting video equipment. I think it's easier to go from being a video creator to an audio podcaster, because hopefully the audio that you've created in the video is of high quality enough to be able to be used as an audio version in an RSS feed. So
I will say one
yeah.
thing I've done with audio only is I use CapCut, which I love, and Canva, which I love to play around with. So I've created images that I've put over the audio to make a video out of it.
Right.
And I'm waiting, as I think I said earlier, for the AI to catch up so I can do a whole video. So I'm hoping I can string those videos together from Canva.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just 2 points, I guess, or question and comment. But when you were talking about the RSS feed, somebody that was attached more to the audio, somebody puts in audio, but they want to add video, and the fact that Spotify would replace one with the other.
Yeah.
And then just to comment on, and I'm such a tech fiend, I'm sitting there thinking, like, I'd be mortified if it did that. I mean, unless, of course, the audio that you were submitting was from your video, as opposed to what I was thinking when you said it was that somebody they did an audio broadcast.
Right.
And then they did a video broadcast, and the two audios may not necessarily be the same.
Right.
But then you have this system that's going to replace one with the other. And basically you end up with a film that looks like some horror film.
Top it off.
Yeah. And the other point is that just in doing this, I mean, when I think about it as an artist, something that you do for audio, that you're specifically for audio, is done and things are said and much differently than when you have a visual going with it.
Yes.
I mean, you behave differently. I mean, you point to something.
Yeah.
Right.
Something,
Right.
Yeah.
it's a whole different thing. So I just can't imagine. I mean, if you're doing it, they've got to be unless you're really good at you really got to sit down and go like, this is one thing and they both got to work in, two different mediums. So.
Yeah, I agree with the question. I think that there are increasing numbers of creators now that are doing a dual approach, where they're, in some ways what we're doing here is kind of similar to what we're talking about, is that you have microphones that show the audience that you're respecting the audio, right? There's a lot of videos, and I'm seeing this kind of movement in the YouTube ecosphere where they're basically getting rid of the mics. So they're doing a show just like what we're doing right now, but they're mounting microphones up above them, kind of like what TV's done, right? For years and years, or they're putting lavaliers on people, and whenever you do that, you're basically putting audio in second place. Right. So that's the trade-off, right? Because if you're a video first creator, you're really focused on trying to create the best video experiences you can, which may include getting rid of these things.
Well, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But from my standpoint, I'm big on both of them. I mean, audios, you've got to be able to hear it. It needs to sound good.
Yeah.
I mean, as a singer and someone who speaks, it's got to be clear. It's, it has to all be good.
Right.
So I see them doing that, I'd be screaming, it's, you know, you've got to have the best lavaliers, it's got to be engineered. And
Yeah.
if you're just hanging mics, you know, got to have good audio,
Yeah.
period. And looking at some of the sets, I just went to an expo and I'm
Yeah.
just watching all the sets and the gear and, you know, seeing these podcasts that are filmed. And I'm mortified by the visual that I'm seeing of these guys with these mics in their face. They have these beautiful
Yeah.
sets. The guy comes, he sits down in this great chair, it's beautifully lit, and he's sitting there, and this mic is.
Yeah, it's like
in
his face, right? It's like-
Yeah, yeah.
7B, which, you know, it's sure it's the standard, it's a great
it's-
mic for this.
Yeah.
Then it's huge, and as a
They're big.
performer, you don't do that. You just don't, you know, that's just not.
But I think that's the difference in mentality of a
Right.
television performer
Right.
versus a podcast. Because
Yeah.
podcasts, you want that. Like,
Yeah.
because that's cool. You got the
Yeah.
mic, it's giant, it's taking over, audio is important,
Yeah.
right? But if you're more a video person, you're like, let me like not hide it, right? I'll
Right.
tape my microphone in so nobody can see it.
You're not
Yeah.
hiding it as much as like it's like, to me, it's just common sense. If you're going to be on camera and that you can use that mic, fine, but you don't do this, you don't stick it in your face.
You don't go like this,
Right.
you mean? I used to do that. She's my coach. She's like, you're hiding behind the mic.
We need some phone books here.
Yeah.
Gear, it's
Yeah.
just, and you have people on there say, we're doing this, and you place it there and said, they can hear you. You don't have to, you know, it's, you know, it's just those little things
Yeah.
as we grow in all this. You know?
One more little element to offer this perspective with a little bit more complexity is that there are AI tools now that will optimize your audio in your video.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you've captured a clean recording of the audio, you just process the audio to make it sound like it was a studio recording.
Yeah.
There's tools that are available out there now that can
Pretty
take, like,
amazing.
What's your
yeah.
favorite?
Yeah. What's your favorite?
Well, I use a tool called Nomano. I brought it with me. It was in my bag, but there's AI tools now. Descript is another one that you can
Yeah.
process your video through it, and it will studio optimize your video.
It has
sound.
good studio sound
Right.
Descript. I've
Descript?
used it.
The script, yeah.
Descript. That does better than CapCut on the audio.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it is possible to get maybe a little lesser quality audio on your video and just optimize it with these new AI tools.
And they'll actually track your eyes. So if you're looking down, it'll make it
Yeah.
look like you're looking at the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be a little creepy
Yeah.
at times.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah.
So we have another
We have,
question.
yeah, some questions.
And then-
Just like the technology
Yeah.
and the equipment that it takes to start up, you know, like budget wise, low
Yeah.
budget, high budget. I'm under the understanding that you can have the best, I just know this from filmmaking, you can have the best technology, but the content is not as interesting, where you can have the lowest technology, but the story, the content is so real and it's so poignant to what's happening.
Yeah.
People want to listen to. Can you give a little feedback on?
Yeah. That's why we're seeing a lot of people create content with their mobile phones now,
Mhm.
is that it's high quality.
Mhm.
Everybody has it, right? And you can do, it's very powerful now. And that's why, that's why shorts have exploded too, is that people are using their mobile phones to create content. And all you gotta do is rotate it landscape wise, and you're doing the same thing we are right here. So it's a very powerful tool, the mobile phones that we have today. But you can go down the rabbit hole if you want. You can get the mirrorless 4K camcorder type, or kind of point and shoot type of a camera, and use it as a video camera and get 4K, and increasingly 6K is probably where we're going to go at some
Jeez.
point here.
I don't like that.
Well, yeah,
It
there's
shows
kind of
every
two
little
ways of
pore
looking
in your
at that,
face,
There's
right?
different wrinkles
I have
and-
touch-up appearance on Zoom.
Well,
There's an app for that. Don't worry.
Well,
What-
yeah, I noticed CapCut has whiten your teeth, take out your wrinkles.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
it's in Zoom. I mean,
Yeah,
It is,
Zoom
yeah.
has it.
that's the
It's
ability
true.
to young yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, we have another question here. Yeah.
Just piggybacks on what you were saying. I would just say I built my YouTube channel, like my first 1,000 subscribers. I didn't spend $1. I've just been using my phone,
Yep.
mic, So it's definitely possible to get started.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like my question is, like I've built my YouTube on, I'm big time YouTube fanboy.
Yeah.
And so I love YouTube and I've built my channel and now I'm kind of at like a lull a little bit. And I've been doing what you guys have been mentioning already, like focusing on the title, focusing on the thumbnail, making sure I have like the hook, the first 5 seconds to keep my retention high, making sure my face is on my thumbnails to kind of build that trust.
Yeah.
But aside from like that stuff, is there any other like marketing, I guess, tips? Even if it's like, I know people pay for like the YouTube promotion or something, like. I know,
Don't do that.
taboo? Okay.
Don't do that. I made that mistake. So,
To the camera, so they-
so I am. So I found this out. So you can do paid promotion on YouTube, but it destroys your channel because what it does is you get all these subscribers, right? So you want to do, you can do paid views, but you get these subscribers. Well, then when you release your next piece of content, it sends it to your subscribers first, but they only subscribe because I don't even know why. They don't watch your content. So then it just buries your channel. So I would not recommend that. That's what happened to me. So I'm rebranding and refocusing. I would pay to get views maybe, but not subscribers
Right.
through that paid promotion on YouTube. But are you doing shorts?
Yeah, I'm like repurposing my long form content with shorts. I've been trying to learn how to create like more native shorts, like actually recording on my phone, and I've been doing that, and some have been doing well. But I think like, and I tag my my latest upload as far as like the related video, and I would say maybe I get one long form video per every 1,000 short views. So like, it's still kind of.
Have you put any of that through like Perplexity or Claude or
So I haven't
ChatGPT?
used any AI. Like all of this has
Okay.
just been me on Canva, scripting my own stuff on my notes app, creating my own ideas, vlogging stuff as well. I've been
Is-
thinking about going live. I'm not sure.
You
But
can get AI to do an analysis for you. And we talked about Google Notebook LM, which you can put all your data in there and it'll conglomerate it all. But I think that's probably what you need to do. What would you suggest? Maybe
Yeah.
not Google Notebook, but have AI look at what you're doing.
Yeah,
What
I
do you
mean,
think?
you could take if you have the ability to create transcripts and things like that too, that can also be good food for the AI. They don't really do a good job of analyzing video yet. So
Mm.
that's coming, I'm sure.
Yeah, so it would have to be the transcript.
I was gonna follow up with that because I tried my paid service ChatGPT to watch my video and it actually lied to me. Oh, yeah.
ChatGPT lied to
Well,
you?
because I was asking.
It didn't really watch, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
said, you didn't watch this. The response was, you're right.
At least it was honest.
Yeah, right.
90%'s okay, 10% is just,
BS.
yeah, because it
Yeah.
wants to appease you.
Well,
It really wants to.
That's the key word, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah, with
AI
ChatGPT.
wants to be this positive reinforcement.
Perplexity
yeah,
doesn't
right.
though.
Oh,
Perplexity.
is it?
No, have
It's
you used
brutal
Perplexity?
truth? Right.
It's like, yeah, it's like your professor of math.
Yeah, and they're much drier.
It's like,
Screwed up.
what?
I don't
I don't
think
think
it does.
I don't think
does
it's
it.
there yet, but like he said, you can put the transcripts through.
Yeah.
And I don't know how good it is yet at doing that. I know there's people, I get emails all the time from people that say they can do this kind of stuff and audit your content and all that, but I don't believe them,
Really, I think the only pathway to do some of this stuff like you're talking about is this agentic topic that we haven't talked about, is the
Of it.
ability to link LLMs together
Yeah.
to process information to create an output,
So that's like ChatGPT and Perplexity and
combined to work
Oh,
together.
I see what you're
Right,
saying.
right.
so Perplexity does have a lot of them that it goes and picks the right one to answer your question.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, but it's changing every day. It's like I'm trying to keep up, but I have to look at it every day to see what else is new, right?
So aside from AI, it's just like the bread and butter, just stay consistent and just pray. And hope.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's the reality though, when like you're creating content, it's, it's really just about hopefully getting some content out there that.
Yeah,
has
it's a tough game.
engagement.
It's a tough
Yeah,
game.
so
There's a lot of people out there,
the algorithm is our god, basically.
right?
Yes.
Do you have guests?
It's
Do you
judging-
have you done any interview type things?
No, everything has been like just me.
Yeah.
You know, just going over the topics that I mentioned before, like fitness,
Right.
personal development. I've had like people give me like their budgets and their expenses, and I've done like, you know, an analysis on that, but I've never
Yeah.
put anybody on the spot. You know, like Caleb Hammer, like you're spending too much money on this financial audit, but
You know what? We are like, we're over time. And I'm sorry, we can stop here and maybe try to do the rest of it on Zoom next time, or we can keep going. How do people feel? Do you want to stay for 15 more minutes, or do you want to? Yeah, just
Okay.
power through this. Okay,
How are th-
okay, so.
Okay, so we'll go another 10, 15.
Yeah.
Okay,
Fine.
all right.
I just want to make one more comment about here. You mentioned like just using your phone, which is great because the technology is growing. One thing I'm finding is that, because I just follow this like crazy, is it's fascinating. The gear's getting better. The technology is going up and the prices are coming down. It's no, it's buying it at a certain level. I mean, I'm just, because I'm, you know, about to buy lights and everything else and seeing there, it just depends on how heavily you're going to use things and what you're using them for. They just, like I said, I just went to that expo, and one of the questions I had, I wanted to start shooting some stuff. Got a new phone, so I need a monitor. It's going to allow me to watch it and do this. And I have to get this whole monitor system for less than $300. It's
Yeah.
incredible. And this is something that somebody else would buy and put on a $20,000 camera.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's amazing to get this gear, and you know, the microphones, those are expensive, but they're not compared to the
Right.
$800 mics
Right.
that's singing.
Right,
Right.
But you know, and they're of a certain quality, and just it's just amazing what you can get like bit by bit.
Mhm.
and it's getting better and it's getting cheaper. I mean, everything, if you don't see what you want today, come back in a week, right?
The other part of it is the learning curve, is
Yeah.
understanding the terminology and how to wire things up, just, you know, knowing how to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and there have been some technical challenges in here, which Wally sitting back there helped me solve. And Angelica, the tech crew, with this equipment, because it doesn't always want to talk to each other the way that you hope it will.
Right.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so for listener experience, I think that, yeah, high quality audio and video. I've heard some terrible audio and I turn it off.
I think that there's a baseline expectation now that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's
I think so.
listenable and not painful.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's the baseline.
Yeah. I think so.
And I think editing is an art,
Yeah.
don't you? Because it gets really choppy if you do it too much.
Well, if you
And-
use AI to do it, it can get very choppy. So you have to be able
Yeah.
to know how to throttle the AI on the editing, you know.
Yeah.
The
How
trick is,
important is that editing? You know, we talked a lot about live, about having bubbles, have it not be too perfect.
Yeah.
And does it make a
I
huge
think it's a
difference?
personal preference thing too. I think it's your own judgment on what you think quality is. And I think it also gets back to your abilities as a presenter,
Mhm.
to not make mistakes of sorts. So these tools can help maybe improve the listener's experience, but they can also be used too much. And it actually degrades the listener experience or the viewer experience. So it's just finding that sweet spot and trying to make sure you're doing what you think is right. Because my co-host on my new media show that I've been doing for 12 years, he doesn't believe in any editing at all,
Mhm.
ever.
Mhm.
I kind of have the view that I like to edit a little bit.
Mhm.
So as a way to respect the audience to some degree. But you know, each is his own, right? And what they want
Well,
to put out in the world.
I think editing is important from one viewpoint, and this is what we say
Yeah.
when we do our radio show,
Yeah.
is it's all recorded. So if you say something stupid or, you know, we can cut it out. And I think it makes people feel a lot more comfortable
Yeah.
if they know that
If they
that
make a mistake, it can be fixed.
it
but-
can be fixed.
It won't turn into the next short.
Look at what this guy here.
He mispronounced his own name. Okay, so should we go to the next one?
Yeah.
I don't want to keep people here too late, but thank you all for hanging with us.
Mhm.
Um,
All right. Video shorts. Wow.
wow,
That is a hot topic these days.
it's a huge one.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's the old saying, you know, if you've done shorts, you know exactly what I'm gonna say here. It's like, they're all over the map, right? There's AI tools to create these things based on your long form content, that can pick the good ones, and they can also pick a lot of bad ones too. So it's not a panacea for, coming up with a successful shorts approach. I have been hearing a lot of people talk about shorts from the standpoint of, having them on your channels, as it relates to YouTube. And I'm increasingly getting this perception that shorts can be a distraction. And I think one of the audience members alluded to this to some degree from your long form content. So somehow keeping them separated from each other somehow in the discovery process for your audience might be an interesting way of doing it. I know people that have created separate whole YouTube channels just for their shorts
Mm.
versus and all their long form content is all on their main channel. So they can take advantage of the traffic opportunity of the shorts, not have it drowned out the long form content in their walls or in their timelines of the longer form content. So there's, you know, this is almost like a whole new medium in of itself, right?
Yeah,
I think a lot of us think of it as kind of, part of our longer form content, but in a lot of ways it's not. It's really a standalone kind of type of media, and it may or may not translate into growing your audience of your longer form content. So chances are it probably is not. And you're not going to make as much money from shorts either. So there's more monetization to be had in the longer form content. And that's an important thing to realize. I think a lot of people can spend a lot of time in shorts because they see higher numbers, right?
yeah.
So your long form content will get, you know, 1,000 views, but your shorts will get 10,000 views. And wow, I'm going to do more shorts because I want the attention. But what you don't realize is that really getting a lot of shorts views isn't necessarily going to help your monetization if that's your goal. So it can help maybe with your personal brand, can help with, face familiarity with people seeing you and becoming familiar with who you are and the information you have to share that might be valuable. So there's benefits to it, but they don't necessarily work together. I don't think with long form content or even your podcast to some degree. They're a standalone medium.
They are, and I think that they work really well on TikTok.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're talking about general shorts. So we did have somebody that used TikTok, and she had a hook and a call to action. She
Yep.
was in an airport doing a TikTok on her phone, and she booked her calendar through the end of the year.
It
Right?
can be effective.
I
agree
mean,
with you. Yeah.
It's just you have to know how to do it. So like I'm analyzing her video, but
Yeah.
she did it specifically to be a short, is what you're saying.
Right.
Not to just to use that as the driver to her website or to her calendar. I think she even, I
Right.
don't know if there's a way to hook your calendar up to it, but she,
Yeah.
um,
Well,
yeah,
some
so,
of the platforms maybe.
yeah, so I think you maybe can have
Mhm.
integration. So I think you're right. I think that they are a different animal,
Mhm.
Yeah. And
and
they can be used for different benefit for you. And I think that is an important way to think about it. And they're going to vary all over the map, like your episodes, as far as how much action. I mean, I've got shorts that I publish that gotten a couple hundred views, and I've got other ones that have gotten thousands of views. So it's all about
Yeah.
the context. It's all about the targeting that's used to find audience. And that's increasingly the other big thing that's going on too, is each of these pieces of content are standing alone. They're standing on their own, and they're standing on their own merits. And in this concept of creating a series of episodes, you know, along a theme or a topic, isn't necessarily how these platforms are working. How they're working is they're looking and analyzing each video as a standalone piece of content and driving audience to it if it's effective at getting people to watch through the whole thing and not flip into the next one.
yeah.
I think the good thing is you can also repurpose those shorts, you know, for Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
and
Yeah, you
other
could repurpose
platforms,
the
right, as
shorts.
far as repurposing.
Vertical formats are becoming more.
So it feels almost like shorts are great for branding yourself more than they are for branding your, or for marketing your podcast.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's.
Or selling things, right? Just
Right,
like what
yeah,
you were
yeah,
talking about, you know, the other big trend that's going on right now is called live video e-commerce. And where people are doing like, well, I wouldn't say they're shorts, but they're vertical videos that are pitching, doing auctions and things. I don't know if you've heard of a platform called Whatnot. But it's a platform where there's content creators in there that are actually creating art and selling t-shirts and selling clothing and selling shoes and stuff live real time. They're doing like 3 or 4 hour live shows. It's almost like the home shopping channel.
yeah.
Wow,
Sounds like
that's
it.
pretty
Wow.
cool.
And people are building, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue off of these channels. People just selling like trading cards and sports cards and all sorts of stuff. So it's
So
it's a-
raise your hand if
yeah.
you've ever bought anything from Shopify from social media. I think I'm the only one. I like to shop.
But if you have a garage full of collector's items that you want to move, you can just start a live streaming channel and
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
To heck with eBay.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a way to support your podcast.
Yeah.
it is.
Okay, so the other point of this, I guess, because I feel so old.
Oh,
I just,
join the
because
club.
what I have here with the doing the critique and doing this, I mean, he's great at this. He's really, and he's so into it. And he knows that I sit there, I just hate social media. Sometimes it drives me crazy. And I'm just amazed at watching how this thing is taking off and how do I become part of this, but not.
Right.
You have an
I mean,
assistant do it all for you like I do.
because it's like it's even now. So now I'm retired. I'm doing this, but as an actor, as an entertainer, it takes a lot of time, and this is like talk about time consuming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've listened
Oh,
to
it
all this,
is.
and even with myself, the way I am with producing things and doing it, I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to do this? Where's the time guy from?
That would be a great, I don't know if you guys have a slide, but especially me, I have a 9 to 5, and it's like to create the content, to edit the content, think about the content, to post the content, to engage with commenters and all of that
Yeah.
stuff, plus your job. It's like,
Takes a lot of work.
yeah,
You have
so
to
much behind the scenes.
you have to hire help, and there's really cheap help out there. Honestly, we have an assistant and she's in Colombia. She's a marketing assistant and she's very inexpensive and she's amazing.
Oh,
And
Yeah.
there are people all over the gig economy that will do these tasks. Well, and then he's going to get into AI agents and they'll do eventually, like a year from now, you won't even be saying this because the agent will be doing it all for you.
like Fiverr or something.
Well, Fiverr's the gig
AI
economy.
actually has assistants these days. You can ask
yeah.
AI to do
Yeah,
some of these things.
Actually, it's this transition between just asking a question of an AI chatbot like ChatGPT versus stringing a bunch of them together to actually get work done, actually take action. That's the next evolution of AI.
Yeah.
It's going to actually,
Do it.
I mean, you just tell it, I want to book a flight to Cancun and I want to only pay this amount and I want to fly between these dates. Book it. And it will go out and find the best trip for you. It'll book it. It'll pay for it. It'll just do all the pieces and you don't have to do anything. Well,
Well, from your credit card.
Yeah.
You have to ask it, go find me a credit card number somewhere too. So to your point, wait a year and then the assistants will be there. If you are tech minded and you don't mind spending a little bit of time learning the
yeah, you
tech.
can build them right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can probably get Claude to build them for you, right? Claude is a really good platform for
Yeah.
writing software. My son uses it.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
what we're going to see from Microsoft and Apple is what all those companies are building is basically agentic solutions companies. That's what they're going to turn into. Because instead of like buying Word and you creating a spreadsheet or something like that, or Excel or whatever, you'll just tell it what you want it to do, tell it where the sources of information are.
You can
or-
already do that.
And it'll actually do it all for you.
It does.
So that's the That's the future.
Yeah, so like I said, if you can't do it now, come back in a week, come back in a month, and there'll be some sort of software solution.
Yeah.
So your favorite software, like I use Canva, will have a new
Yeah.
feature, like Rob just told me about the video feature. So,
And
yeah,
it might, at this point, it probably could get you halfway there,
right.
you know? And
Yeah.
so it might save you half the amount of time. Speaking of Canva, I just wanted to read a note that came into the chat that I didn't know about, but CapCut recently changed. Oh, that was Canva. Sorry, this is CapCut.
Yeah, that's okay.
Anyway, CapCut recently changed the terms and conditions that potentially give them rights to your intellectual property.
Ew.
Make sure to check out the terms to ensure you are okay with the changes made. So that's huge.
That's not nice.
No.
Like a editing app.
What
Yeah.
they have in mind.
Yeah, I know. So maybe whatever they edit, they own. Yeah, so definitely check that out.
Well, yeah, because I was gonna submit a cat video to America's Funniest Home Videos, and I read the fine print. You give up all your rights, and they own all the intellectual property to the video if
Yeah,
you do that.
sure.
You can't use it anywhere else ever again.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
so I
Wow.
didn't do it.
Huh.
So anyway,
Okay.
maybe CapCut's doing the same thing. I don't know.
Yes, I think
And-
we've talked about most of the items on this next
Mhm,
slide. I
yeah.
think, really social media is converting into being interest media. And then there's a derivative of selling media, right? Which is, it's the home shopping network on steroids. So this concept of being social is being captured, because what's being captured is you and I and all of us. What are our interests is what we're catering to now. So,
Mhm. Yes.
Do you think there's a next phase of that? Like, can
uh,
you see that with AI? Can you foresee? Can you predict the future?
Well, I think that AI is gonna try and predict what our interests are
Mm,
based
Yeah.
on all these different signals that it picks up in our environment.
Well, my Kindle already does that, but the problem is I share my Kindle with Richard, and he
yeah.
doesn't know what to tell us to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's kind of happening now, but it's going to get worse, is what you're saying.
Well, it's just gonna continue to progress and get, it's a little creepy, actually, the more you think about it. It's, in order to do all these things, it's gonna have to have deep knowledge about you, your finances, your life. And maybe we're okay with the AI knowing everything about what we do and how we live our lives, so it can optimize our lives for us. So it depends on how far down this rabbit hole that we're willing to accept.
Well, your phone and your TV are always listening.
Right.
I mean, my phone will say, "What did you say?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or especially
think-
Alexa, when it just pipes up and starts talking to you about
Yeah.
something that you didn't even address the question. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In some ways, it replaces the stress of trying to build a big community
Right.
with the stress of creating amazing or very interesting content that will be picked up by an algorithm.
Yes.
So I mean, both are challenging, right?
Right.
One could be a quick hit that is just from some creative output, where the other one takes long, sustained effort.
Right. Right. So the comment was you can try to build a community slowly and surely, or it can give you this great piece of content that builds it overnight. So
Or
Really-
shifting the focus really to creating interesting content. Is
Yeah.
that what you were saying? Right.
yeah,
Emphasize
yeah,
and distribute. So
yeah.
Well, the algorithm has the power to make success or failure. I think that's the bigger thing. There's examples, I know that if you're a YouTube creator, you're always hoping that next video makes you a superstar, right?
Yeah.
It blows up and gets 1 million views or something like that. And that's what keeps content creators pushing forward, because they're always trying to get to that prize.
So this is the last slide, analytics. So I feel like this is where you get into Google's head a little bit.
Yeah.
So Google owns YouTube, as you know, so that you have some analytics, important analytics with YouTube. And then also there's insights on some of these social media platforms. I think Instagram has an insights tab.
Yep.
And it will give you data on listenership, etc. And it can be surprising, because when I was doing my ghost podcast, it was men 19 to 26 that were listening to it. I was like, I thought this was going to be for kids, right? And so you really have to look at your analytics, and there are a lot of paid programs that'll do that and a lot of, but I think that's another reason to have things on YouTube, because you can get the data for free on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little amazing how much data you actually get out of YouTube, how much they're analyzing everything about your channel, graphs and charts, and it's remarkable. And I think there's a lot of envy in the podcast medium about the depth and the scope of the analytics that's available in YouTube today. And so I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on podcasting companies to bring that level of data to their platforms if they're going to compete here. So that may be what the future looks like, is we just all get access to so much more data about everything that we're doing in our lives and our content and things like that. So
Well, at least it uses AI to give you a summary now.
Do you feel like the data that you get on YouTube translates to podcasts? Like, can you get that free data and then use it for your podcast?
I think you can to some degree. Yeah, I think it just depends on what you're doing. If you're doing the exact same thing in your podcast as you are doing in YouTube, I think that there is a strong correlation
Mhm.
between audiences there. But that factor of the algorithm is hard to really understand what the differences might be. So it's going to be important for podcasting to have their own analytics structure, because it is audio only primarily, which is a different medium than video. So, how long somebody watches is something different than how long someone listens. I think it can be a different dynamic.
Is there a way to find out your competitors' data? Maybe not directly?
TubeBuddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, TubeBuddy's a good one, and
Yeah.
vidIQ.
Yeah, vidIQ is another one.
TUBE Buddy.
Yep.
The free version is very limited in what you can see, but there's a paid version that you can see a lot more metrics. Like a good one is that you can see like the tags that they add in there when they upload a video. You can kind of, like, if that's the same niche that you're trying to get into, you can kind of copy the tags that they're adding.
So the question was, how do you
Yeah.
see what your competitors are doing? So TubeBuddy on YouTube and vidIQ on YouTube.
Good IQ.
Vid,
Vid.
VID,
Yeah, sorry.
IQ.
Right.
Give you a lot of data and information on your podcast and on other people's too.
Well, and on the podcasting side, there's one
Oh.
called Podchaser. There's
Yeah.
another one that kind of can give you some competitive analytics on what other shows are doing and how popular they are.
If you were to come up with the top 3 things that you have used the most successfully for marketing, what would that be?
Oh, it's definitely search. Making sure that you're good with your keywords, I think, is the most important thing historically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that's going to play out as we look to this new AI discovery process, because I think AI is going to be looking into the content, not looking
Mhm.
for metadata,
Mhm.
which is different. It'll actually analyze a transcript, and increasingly that's what we're seeing happen, is all content is being analyzed at the transcript level,
Yeah.
which is really going to give them all the information that they need to properly index or promote your show, create derivative content, do all sorts of things with your content. And that may be what we were just pointing out here, that the platform CapCut
Right.
wants. Really what they're asking for is derivative rights.
Wow.
Or to sell that data to an AI platform for training.
Yeah.
So
I would,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
right.
Do you have a second one?
um
Have you done anything unusual or a little out of the box that has worked, or heard of anything a little out of the
Yeah.
box that's worked?
yeah, I've definitely heard many successful podcasters buying ads for their podcasts on other people's podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay, I see we have
Say what?
somebody passing out water here, but he's making people beg for it.
Right, exactly. Yes, question.
Give a short example based on his personal experience of a derivative. Say a derivative,
Yeah,
Just a little bit on that. So like, say, for instance, you did a podcast.
Yeah.
Or you did your radio show or her podcast.
Yeah.
And you put it into ChatGPT or whatever, one of these. And it translated your entire podcast and then took out certain words that were like keywords or
Yeah.
three words. That would be the derivative. And then they want to, and that's what's essential.
Well, in a lot of ways, LLMs or these large language AI models are basically all built on derivative content.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
because they're using other people's data to train what they do, and what they're doing is pulling out pieces out of other people's content to assemble new content, which is the definition of what derivative content is.
There's nothing's original.
Right. Well, I mean,
The quantum field in a way.
Yeah.
it's original from the standpoint that it's a different combination, right?
Mhm.
That's why each time you do a query in Chat GPT, generally you'll get a completely different output.
Yeah.
But increasingly they're allowing you to make edits to existing output, right? So you can make minor edits to existing output, and that's not as much of a randomized derivative. I think another example of derivative content that the social platforms have done is with your photos. Well, they'll create like a photo story of your photos where it will look at all the photos and it'll map together a motion picture type of an experience with your content, with your photos.
Mhm.
So it's creating a derivative form of your content. And I think that's going to happen with podcasts too, that there's going to be engines that will create derivative versions that will use various parts of other shows to create a new piece of content.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. One last out of the box idea that you've heard of for marketing?
Yeah, I think the big trends in the industry right now around that are, it's all about making audience connections. And I think we're shifting towards more people wanting to develop their own private communities and establishing direct relationships with audience and being able to control that relationship. I think we've all built our companies and our media brands around using these third-party platforms that are gatekeepers to audience because they want to own the audience, right?
Mhm.
To increasingly, content creators are using platforms that will enable you to own that direct relationship with the audience and be able to monetize that relationship. Because I do think that there is a trend line, and this is a little bit derivative to the marketing question, but it's more to do with what the future looks like around how we create shows and how we market them and how we present them to our audiences. Is that advertising is kind of losing steam fast. So, and if you think about all of the subscription models that are out there, even Spotify, or you think of YouTube, people are subscribing to not have ads in their content.
Right.
What we're doing is we're training audiences to not want ads.
Mhm.
So this monetization around ads may have a short time span. So increasingly start to think about, capturing direct contact relationships, newsletters, getting email addresses, getting other forms of contact information with your audience over a period of time and being able to leverage that to have more of a direct relationship. So you're not as dependent on these Spotify platforms and Apple
Right.
and YouTube to have that
Yes.
relationship with your audience.
Have them just disappear overnight.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Rob, are you consulting with people that are doing podcasts now?
Mhm.
How do they find you then?
Well, I'm on social media. You can reach out to me if you want. I do have a platform on schools or school. Actually, it's at school.com/. It's the Adore Network. So if you type in Adore Network, and then I also have a podcast network myself called adorenetwork.com. And I'm also increasingly working with another podcast network called Passion Struck, a network. So trying to build out, this whole movement towards creators kind of teaming up with each other to find ways to take advantage of working together. The days of individual creators being able to navigate this complex media landscape now individually and solo are increasingly becoming difficult. So that's why we're seeing this growth and development of networks, is because it allows groups of shows to team up with each other and help each other to grow, share resources, share monetization. And so I think that's a big trend in the industry right now, is content creators being a part of a network of other creators that align with them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Rob is coming into New York with me tomorrow, and Richard, he's going to be on the Passage to Profit show. And I think we're going to talk more about future trends with AI. It all applies to podcasting and everything in your life, but we'll let you know when the episode is released. It's the Passage to Profit show if you want to hear
Okay.
more from Rob, but you're also giving presentations other
Oh,
places
yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I
um,
have my own shows to my own podcasting. If you go to adorenetwork.com,
how do you spell that?
Yes.
ADORE.
So adore, like I adore you.
I adore you. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You adore your audience.
Yes. Well, that was the idea, is to have a bunch of shows in there that people would like. So
Yeah,
that's
that
it.
they would adore. It's a
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Passage to Profits only like on podcast and not on YouTube or anything?
It's mostly on podcasts. We do
the
put the
radio.
whole podcast. Yeah, it's on the radio too,
Okay.
but probably not. It's on late at night, but we put the whole podcast on our YouTube channel, just the audio with the logo there. And we are doing some short YouTube clips from it. So you can find it on YouTube. Yes, on the Passage to Profit show channel.
And it's
Oh.
on Apple.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah. So, yeah, so Rob will be coming out on there a couple of weeks from now.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear what you're gonna say tomorrow.
Yeah, I
So,
can't
yeah.
wait to say
It's
it.
gonna change by the time
Yeah.
you put it out.
So can I flip to the last slide
Yeah.
real quick? So,
Okay, that's what's coming up, right?
yeah, so this is what's coming up next time. Sonia and I are gonna host Karen Rubenstein. She was a designer in the city, in the fabric district for 20 years. And she still does amazing design work. Sonia's gonna go really deep into your why. And Karen's gonna go into designing with Canva and Adobe and tricks and tips and different things to look for. And that's gonna be on Zoom because it's July and everybody's gonna be on vacation, so, yeah. So, that's July 22nd on Zoom, so that's it.